Hey guys, this is FightWrite, a writer's resource for writing fight scenes, action, and violence. I'm Carla, and today I am going to go over my #1 tip for blocking out a fight scene. If you don't have my book, FightWrite, How to Write Believable Fight Scenes with Writer's Digest / Penguin Random House, this is what it looks like right here. I do have some tips on writing fight scenes, but I don't have this tip in there. This is a tip you're only going to see on my blog, FightWrite, FightWrite.net, and here on this channel. Whenever I'm interviewed, I am often asked, what is the #1 issue I see when I'm helping writers with fight scenes? I also mentor writers with fight scenes. I'm also a fight scene editor. I work with a publishing house on editing out their fight scenes, and every now and then I'll do some individual contract work. And the #1 problem I see is, and it's not just from other writers, I'm guilty of this myself, we write too much. Less really is more when it comes to a fight scene. And I think a really great reference on that is our comic books. Comic books are fantastic fight scene references. They have a very limited amount of space to really tell you a story. And so every illustration, every call-out bubble, every bit of dialogue is going to be important to the story. Writing, I've said this 100 times, 101 now, writing is like fighting. You want maximum efficiency with minimal effort. And with your fight scene, go ahead and write it as we writers say, vomit it out on the page, get that whole fight scene out on the page, write as much as you want to write, and then go back through, and I almost said underline. Does anybody handwrite anything anymore? I'm an 80s kid, okay? Go back through and highlight the movement that you would see in a comic book. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. Comic books do not illustrate every tiny action of the fight. Comic books don't take you through the fight second by second by second. What they do is they take the gross movements and then they add a lot of sensory details around it. I automatically think of Batman, the old TV show. I'm really dating myself today. But in the old TV show, you saw Biff, pow, bam. That's a sensory experience. And when you see that in a comic book, and I'm going to show you one today from the comic book Old Man Logan, which all the comic books I'm going to show you today are free on Kindle Unlimited. There is a illustration where they have an arrow going through somebody, and all around it they have flip, 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 and that's just perfect because you can imagine the sound of that arrow hitting. What they don't do is all the little things that are going on around him. In that moment, all that matters are those arrows. So take out the big, major, gross movements in your fight scene and keep those. The little tiny movements, the little foot movements, the turning of the shoulders and all that, maybe you can leave some of that out. Only leave it in if it's pivotal to the scene. In comic books, you don't see the characters doing tiny movements unless it totally changes the scene. Here are some examples of exactly what I'm talking about. One of my favorite books for references on fight scenes is, go figure, it's Fight Club. If you've seen the movie Fight Club, it's a pretty darn good representation of the book. The book is better. If you've never read anything by Chuck Palahniuk, he is a gritty kind of writer. So don't expect to pick up the book Fight Club and think it's going to be a lovely, fluffy read, because it is not. What Chuck Palahniuk is a master of is writing exactly enough as you would see in a comic book panel. Oh my gosh. Okay, and so here is one of those scenes. What is happening right now? #3 seems to know what I need and holds my head in the dark and the smother. There's a sleeper hold that gives you just enough air to stay awake. #3 holds my head in the crook of his arm, the way he'd hold a baby or a football in the crook of his arm, and hammers my face with a pounding molar of his clenched fist, until my teeth bite through the inside of my cheek. Until the hole in my cheek meets the corner of my mouth, the two run together into a ragged leer that opens from under my nose to under my ear. Number 3, pounds until his fist is raw, until I'm crying. How everything you ever love will reject you or die. Everything you ever create will be thrown away. Everything you're proud of will end up as trash. I am Ozymandias, King of Kings. One more punch, and my teeth click shut on my tongue. Half of my tongue drops to the floor and gets kicked away. If I could have a crush on a fight scene, and maybe I do have a crush on a fight scene, don't judge me, this is it. What are the actions that we have actually seen in this fight scene? We have seen somebody hold the narrator's head under his arm like a football. I'm sorry, I have a cat in my lap. We have seen teeth bite through his cheek. That is kind of a small movement, but that is something that would be illustrated in a comic book panel because it's very important. It's biting through his cheek, and you need to know that because it's going to open up a hole that's going to create kind of a Joker-like smile across his face, which is pretty darn symbolic in this situation. You see the fighter pounding his fist, and you see teeth click shut on a tongue, and half the tongue drops to the floor and gets kicked away. That is brilliant writing because it's really, as much as it is writing action, it is a sensory experience at the same time. And Palahniuk has given us visuals that we can absolutely relate to. We know what it looks like to hold a football underneath our arms. We know how awful it feels to bite our cheek. And when he says that my teeth click shut on my tongue, it's an incredible visual that you walk away with. So, this is a great example of only telling the action that you would see in a comic book panel and really relying on the sensory experience. Okay, these examples are from Night of the Living Deadpool, which is free on Kindle Unlimited. If you are looking for comic books as references to help you kind of figure out how to write your fight scene, there are a ton of comic books on Kindle Unlimited. All right, Night of the Living Deadpool. Here we see that Deadpool is a horde of zombies is coming toward him. A lot of action went on in this scene that's just basically understood. You know that what happened in this entire sequence was more than what is depicted in these 5 panels, but what we're seeing in these panels is really the most important thing. 3 pages later in the same scene, a car drives up and they help Deadpool out, and you see the machine gun there kind of in the very top, and you see braka braka braka. I love that. I love the whole onomatopoeia, isn't that what it's called? I love when that's added into, and that's something Chuck Palahniuk does a lot too, where they add in the sounds of what's happening because it's taking your reader ringside versus just letting them sit on the couch and watch the fight. Okay, this next example is from Old Man Logan, The Last Ronin. I believe this is from part 3, The Art of War. In that very top panel, you see them hit heads, and in the second panel, you see that it's hard enough that there's blood, some kind of dark fluid coming out of the villain's head, and then you see the villain kick Logan hard enough that Logan goes back and hits the wall. There's only 2 actions depicted in this scene. There's a headbutt, and there's a kick. The headbutt is important because it's, quite honestly, it's a baller move to headbutt somebody, to get that close to them. The reason the kick is illustrated is because you see how hard Logan was kicked, and that's part of what the artist wants you to know. He wants you to know how strong the villain is. Something else you're going to notice a lot in comic books is tons and tons of dialogue. Is there really such a thing as too much dialogue? I personally don't think so. I've read a heap of books in my time, and I can't think of one that I just thought, I got to put this book down. There's way too much dialogue. Is it possible to have too much dialogue going on in your fight scene? Well, yeah, if it takes away from the action itself. There are some things you cannot talk while you're doing. I can't talk while someone is hitting me in the face. However, after I've fallen to the floor or I've hit the wall and I've stopped and I've kind of come back to my senses, then I can start talking again. Something else you will notice, these people, when they are fighting, they are out of breath, but they're still having a dialogue. I don't see the big deal with that. Yes, you're going to have some people say, well, that's not believable. You can't talk when you're that tired. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You know, who are we to say? So I don't think there's too much, such a thing as too much dialogue in a fight scene. I think you definitely need, I love the sound effects that go into it, like when Polinick talks about teeth clicking shut. I love that. And I think it is a great idea to give more attention to the fight experience, the sensory experience of it, than the actual actions of the fight scene. Okay guys, that's it. That's it for this round of FightWrite on YouTube. Do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and subscribe to my blog, FightWrite.net. When you subscribe to the blog, you are going to get some subscriber-only information. I give you some handy guides that you can keep. I don't want to tell you what's on there, but it's several different guides that have to do with injuries, so that you can show what is happening to a character versus just telling your reader. And who wants to do that? That's just lazy writing. So I've got some references on there for you, and every now and then I put out some subscriber-only posts that should be very helpful. Until the next round on FightWrite, get blood on your pages.